Hello, everyone. This is Ed Breniger, and welcome to the Eddie Network podcast. And this is the third video of a series on listening to younger generations. And today I want to talk about families and a concern that I have um, of families as a social structure for the development of young people, children, adolescents, into adults that are well developed and prepared to lead society. And the central question I have is is how the family has become secondary as an institution in our society. Children are born into families, and yet it seems as if all these other institutional structures, sports, schools, and now social media, these are all the places of real influence, and they're the ones who are determining what the child turns out to be. And I know this is true because I raised three children, and I talk with families all the time, and I talk to their children all the time, and I know how difficult it is to be a parent today. The demands on parents are heavy. And I spent 15 years as a leader in the Boy Scout movement, as 8 of those years as a scoutmaster, and so I was dealing with 35 to 40 boys every year and their parents, and trying to negotiate how they go through pre-adolescence. They would come into our scout troop at 10 and a half or 11 years of age and be there till they'd be there a year, or they'd be there until they're 18 when they age out. And so, saw all kinds of things, but this was also 20 years ago. It's a different world than it was 20 years ago. A lot different. It was before the smartphone appeared. But that is really as important as the question of where does the family fit in the social structures of the world today. I think there's a deeper issue that I think has a negative effect upon children and emerging young adults. And that is how we talk with our children about the family itself. I'm concerned because I hear this and I see this, that there are things that are never said to a child because the parent doesn't want to hurt the child. They keep things from the child. Family history, which may not be of the sort of thing we should be proud of. And so it's kept from the child. I've had this conversation with so many people. It's not like this is kind of a random thing. This is clearly a behavior, a pattern of behavior that happens in families where parents are not fully honest and transparent with their children. And by keeping things from them, when the child finds out, it means that there is a problem between the parent and the child at whatever age. I mean, the parent can be my age, and the child finds out, oh, I didn't know that went on in our family. Why didn't you tell me? My point is not what we keep from our children. My point is that what does it mean for us to be truthful and honest and transparent with our children so that they learn to be truthful and honest and transparent with their children and with the people that they work with. I realized when my oldest son was about 11 or 12, and my youngest child was 5 or 6, that I could continue to do what I was doing and being the dad who played with them and who did things and provided for them. And, and I could be that person until they got to 18 and they finished high school and they went off to college. And, and essentially my role in their life as their father was over when they went off to college. And I realized that that was not a very good, they didn't have good prospects to it. I realized that there was a lot of things going on in their life that we weren't addressing. We weren't talking about it. So I decided that I would treat my children as adults as early as I could. And what does that mean? It means that I would not give them easy answers. I would listen to them. I would talk with them. If they asked me a question, why did this go on? What's going on here? And I would not say, well, here's the answer. I wasn't giving them easy answers. I would give them a question and say, so what do you see? What do you think's going on here? Well, I don't know. Why did this go on? Why did that person say that? I'm wanting them to ask the questions for themselves and not simply look to me for the answer. Because I wasn't going to always be there to give them the answer. And so I helped them learn how to ask questions. Helped them learn how to be independent, to think critically. And if you know my children, that's exactly the way they are. And I'm very pleased. It was just one of those dumb ideas that came about. Said, I think I need to talk with them as adults. Just one of those simple ideas. And it made all the difference in the world. Now, you have to be a person who is willing to be transparent and honest and truthful and respectful and trustworthy with your children if you're going to treat them as adults. Because if you can do that, or if you're a grandparent and you do that, if you can do that, then they're going to enter into adulthood and go through adulthood and go through, getting married and have their own children and going through the world of work. They're going to have an experience that helps them understand why people are constantly lying to them. And if you think I'm simply being a negative person, no, I'm not. I'm being observational, that people lie to us all the time because they're afraid of being embarrassed. They're afraid of looking inadequate. People are afraid of being their true selves because the systems of the world and the institutional structures of the world are organized around being powerful and in control, but also being very detached from other people's lives. But if you can treat your children as adults, you can ask them questions, you can be honest and transparent and say, I don't know. What do you think? Oh, that makes sense. Thank you for helping me see something that I couldn't see, but you saw. If you can do that, then they're going to enter into all these other situations in their life and be able to see when they're being manipulated, or they're going to be able to see when things are not healthy for them. I see that this is one of the things that we can do for young people in younger generations today, is be honest with them and truthful. But in order for that to happen, we have to be honest and truthful with ourselves. And I don't think that that's a very easy thing in our world today. And and if you will go to my Substack and look for the held hostage in a luxury hotel post, what you'll see is a little diagram. I can show it to you here, but it'll be distracting because I'd have to explain it to you. What we find is that there is a culture of simulation. Sorry for that big word. The culture of simulation is a simulated reality, and a simulated reality is a set of false realities. It's set up there for you to believe something which is not true. And when you believe something that's not true, it makes you feel anxious and it makes you feel uncomfortable because you don't understand it. You know something down inside of you is telling you this is not accurate, and yet you buy into it because everyone around you is buying into it. This is how the simulation works, how propaganda works, this is how the manipulation of advertising works, convincing you that you need to have a more expensive car than you need because the status of that will benefit you in your relationships. Well, if it does it, then those relationships are not very healthy. So what I'm saying is that in our families, we need to be talking truthfully, and we need to have moments of conversation where everyone is able to put their cards on the table and do so in a respectful, trusting way. Because you can see it in many of the movies and television shows that are produced. You see how the brokenness of families is built around lying and lack of trust and lack of respect and of one side or the other having expectations for the other, which are never expressed, but yet are held over that other person. Whether it's the parent of the child or the child of the parent, it doesn't really matter. And so we have these very toxic situations occur because we're not talking honestly with one another. And we're not talking honestly with one another because we're not talking honestly with ourselves. So I am convinced that we need to decide on our own whether we want to kind of go along to get along in this world, or we are going to decide this is who I am, and I'm going to test it to see whether it's true. If I can test it to see it's true, then I have a very clear self-awareness. I know who I am, and I know who I'm not. I wrote a short book back during the first year and a half of the COVID pandemic called May Your No Be a Yes. And what prompted that little book was a conversation I had with a client. And the conversation was she was was starting a business. She had been working in a business. She had left that business. She was now starting her own business. Her husband had been sent home to work from home. So she was at home working from her new business, and she had two children, and I think she now has 4, maybe 5. But what she was telling me was, I feel all this pressure to comply with all these expectations that people place on us. And it's not just my friends placing expectations, it's the institutions that are placing. She was talking about the schools and having all these different fundraisers. She said, don't do the fundraisers, just ask for a check. I'm glad to give you a check. Just don't ask for all this time and investment because it's not helping me deal with my family and my business at the same time. And so what I said to her was, well, you need to know what your values are. Because when you know what your values are, you can say no and say, I'm going to say no to this request that's being made of me because that value, whatever that may be, is more important than your request for my time or my money. And so knowing what your yes is, knowing what your values are, is really a key to knowing who you are. And when you know who you are, and you can communicate that to your family, and you can have this conversation about what are the values that our family has together, then as a family, you figure out how to say no to things which are detrimental to the health of the family and detrimental to the health of the child, detrimental to the health of the parent, detrimental to the entire structure of this family. So it's really important that you have conversations as a family about what it is that you value. And it's not that I mean, you could write a value statement for your family, but at least you need to have some understanding of what everyone in your family values. Because when you're aware of that, then you're going to see that in them when they're making a comment. And that comment is based on, say, something where they feel a deep compassion for a particular type of person. And so when they say something, oh, well, that's the way she thinks. I can accept that. I understand. And I'm not going to challenge that because I care about her more than I care about being right in this situation. So when you have clarity of values with your family, then you can be truthful, as long as truth is one of the values that you value. And I don't find that that's always true. That families are used as kind of vehicles for personal advancement. And because of that, uh, there's there is there's a kind of a cancer within the family structure where people know when they're being used, or when they know that there is something not quite right with the attitude of the parent or the child. So as we're listening to younger generations, we need to be really clear about the families that they're coming out of, because many of them are coming out of families where there was not honesty and they were hiding things about what had happened in previous generations. And when you hide those things and they find out later, it's not a good thing. It's not healthy. But that's what happens. And I know the rationale. Oh, we're not going to tell them because we want to protect them. Or we're not going to tell them because we don't want this to get out in the public because it would be embarrassing to the family. Okay, I can understand that. But you still have to reckon with the damage that comes by keeping particularly difficult and dark things from particularly if you're a parent and you're keeping dark things and difficult things of your family's past from your children, because what may happen is they may find out from some other source of what went on. And that's not a healthy thing for the cohesion of a family unit. So let me kind of back up, start over, and say this. If you want to listen to young adults, you have to begin by treating them with respect, and you have to trust them and express your trust in them that they're going to speak to you truthfully. And I find that they're much more likely to speak truthfully to us older people when we treat them with respect. They will trust us because they see that we're not trying to manipulate them, and they're very sensitive to that sort of thing. So if you have a family and you have children, or you have a family with children and with grandchildren, my recommendation is that you begin to not talk about what has happened in the past that you will that you've never talked about, but rather talk about what are the values which we want our family to represent? What are the values that we want for our family so that we can make decisions as a family? Hear that? We're making decisions as a family so that we can care for one another. And that, as in my case, I can have a very close relationship with my three children as if they're in the top 10 of all my relationships. They're my closest people because we are able to be totally honest with one another and we respect one another. And out of that is where the love that holds a family together comes from. So if you want to support young adults, then you lead your families in such a way that they know that there's trust and they know that there's honesty and they know that there's transparency and they will be able to receive bad news more likely as less damaging to the family. They can hear that, oh, well, that happened. Well, old Uncle Bill, well, he was thrown in jail. Okay, well, okay, that doesn't, that's not a thing that we want to go around and talking about with the public, but we're also not going to allow it to devastate us as a family. So my advice, my recommendation is you take care of your family, you become really clear about what your values are, and you create moments where you can talk with one another openly, honestly, and transparently. Now, and let me give you one example of how you might do this. I have friends here in town, John and Charlotte, and Charlotte reached out to me and she said, "I'd like you to come speak at my family's genealogy dinner." And I said, "What? What's a genealogy dinner?" She says, "I'm having my family over and I want you to come talk to my family about your idea of generational memory, about the memory of past generations having an effect upon us today." I said, "Okay." So I went and had dinner with them and I asked them questions. And what I saw was that they had this awareness of their family because they had been honest and open about what had transpired over the many generations. And they were very tight as a family because of that. It was a lovely thing to see. I'm very grateful to them for the invitation. So take care of your family. Whoever you haven't talked to in a period of time, call them up. Go see them. And they will be shocked, but they'll also appreciate it. But in particular, talk to with your young people, whether it's children, adolescents, or emerging adults. Talk with them about what does the family mean to you? And do you want a family? I mean, I encounter adults that don't want families because their family experience was so bad. That's unfortunate. One last story. I was at this is several years ago, it was before COVID. I was in France. I was at a World War II memorial site. They had a visitor center. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was the only one there. And they had these two young women who were working the desk. And I just started talking to them. And I said, "You all seem so bright, and you actually know this stuff." And I said, "How is it that you do this?" He said, "Well, we just like this stuff." I said, "So, are either of you married?" And said one of them was married. And I said, "So are you plan to have children?" And they said, "Oh no, we're not going to have children. We don't want to bring children into a world like this." And I said to them, "No, that's the wrong attitude. because you are aware of what's going on. You would be the best parents because you're going to care for your children so that all the negative things that could happen to them will be canceled out. I don't think I convinced them of that, but you see, that's the way I see it. If you can develop a very transparent and caring relationship with your children and your grandchildren and by extension your siblings and their children and their grandchildren, then you have a chance to create something which is unique and will attract other people to you because they're going to say, so how is it that your family is so strong? And you can say, well, we care for each other and we're honest and we respect each other and we don't play games by lying to one another. And that really is really the key. So I thank you for watching the Eddie Network podcast. Next week, we'll be talking about authenticity and what young people are looking for in a person who is authentic. I think you'll find it very interesting. I thank you for watching. I appreciate you hitting the like button and signing up to receive these messages every week. And we'll see you next time here on the Eddie Network podcast. Bye-bye.